Hey, what's up YouTube? I'm the Smartphone Guy coming back at you with another video, and tonight we're going to do a comparison of two sibling phones. In my left hand I have the Huawei Mate 10 Pro, and in my right hand I have the Honor V10. So these are two phones that have a lot of similarities, but there are definitely some differences. So we're going to do a quick comparison of the two devices, and as you can see from the title of this video, we are going to be giving this phone right here away, the Honor V10. So check out the link below for Gleam, click on that, and then you're going to see a number of ways that you can enter the giveaway for this device. So the giveaway will end on March 6th, so it's going to be a little while because I want a chance to go over this phone thoroughly before I give it away. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get down to the comparison. Alright, so let's go ahead and start out this comparison with a discussion of the price point of these two devices. So on the left hand side, the Mate 10 Pro is available right now for pre-order in the US for $800. So with that being said, you do get a $150 gift card if you pre-order it. That is from Amazon, Best Buy, and B&H, so I'll leave links down in the description if you're interested in checking that out. So $800 is the price. Once that pre-order is done, it's just going to go back to $800. The Honor V10 actually isn't available in the US as of right now. Now, my guess is that when it does launch in April, which is the official launch for the V10, it will be available for around $450 to $500. My best guess is $500 for the V10. Right now, you can pick it up on GearBest.com, though, which is the sponsor for this video. And GearBest.com, you can pick it up for right around $450 to $500, which is why I mentioned that price point. However, if you live in the US, I wouldn't recommend necessarily getting this version because you will only get 2G, as you can see here. You're not going to get 3G or even 4G service or LTE on the device, at least with T-Mobile. I haven't tried it with Cricket, but you can check out the bands below for what bands this one supports. So let's go ahead now and talk about the build quality of these two devices, and for that I'm going to go ahead and bring in a third device, which is the Honor 7X, as you can see here. So the way I see these three devices is, I imagine if you took the internals of this device and put the externals of this device, they kind of like mated, had a baby, they would have this one right here, the V10. And the reason I say that is because when you compare the externals of these two phones, the Honor 7X and the Honor V10, they're basically identical. Now you can obviously notice a couple of differences. So fingerprint sensor on the V10 is up here on the front, whereas on the Honor 7X it's on the rear. And you can see the cameras and the flash are reverse of each other, and the antenna bands are slightly different, but I tried out cases for this phone on the V10 and they fit just perfectly. Obviously this one has an opening for the fingerprint sensor on the rear, so you had an opening there that you didn't need, but other than that they fit perfectly, because if you look, they're basically identical, except this one has micro USB and Type-C on the V10, but they both have the headphone jack in the same spot, the speaker in the same spot, and everything else is basically identical. Now you can see that there is an IR sensor on the V10 that you don't get with the Honor 7X, so that is one thing that will get blocked, and also the microphone, but other than that the case fit perfectly because they have the exact same form factor. Now we'll slide that one out of the way, and when we're talking strictly between these two devices, I think the choice is obvious. If price isn't a factor in your purchasing decision, then obviously, in my opinion, the Huawei Mate 10 Pro clearly has a more premium feel. So it's a glass back versus a metal back, and I think it just looks more premium overall. Now it does collect some fingerprints, obviously, as you can see, but it actually doesn't do too bad when it comes to glass, in my opinion. But definitely a very, very premium device with the Mate 10 Pro. One other thing to mention in terms of the build, this isn't necessarily a build thing, but in terms of the display, they both have 6-inch displays. The difference being this one's AMOLED, whereas this one's IPS LCD. Both are 6-inch though, and they both have that 18:9 aspect ratio. So very similar displays, just IPS versus LCD here. Now the next area I want to talk about is the performance of the two, and for that I'm basically just going to call this 100% a complete draw between the two. So I'm not even going to pick a winner because they both have the same processor, 970. That's the high silicon Kirin 970. Both cases in which ones I have 6 gigs of RAM with both of these, so I don't know if the V10 when it launches in the US will have 6 gigs of RAM, but the version I have, which is the Chinese version, does have 6 gigs of RAM, and in terms of performance I notice zero differences between the two, which is to say they both are very fast phones. Now you will notice that I do have a skin on top of mine. That's because I put a theme on top of my phone, so I am basically running, if you go into the theme store, for those of you that are interested, I believe this one's called Pure AOSP right there. So it's basically trying to run a pure version of Android Nougat, I believe is what we're going for here. So that's just a theme that you can put on top of the device, in case you were wondering. Alright, so the next area I want to compare between these two devices is the cameras on the rear and on the front of both of these two. So real quick, there are 3 main differences that I see between the two devices. So over here on the Mate 10 Pro, we have a 20 and 12 megapixel camera that are at f1.6 aperture, and over on the Honor V10 we have a 20 megapixel, same monochrome sensor that you get on the Mate 10 Pro, but then the other sensor is a 16 megapixel camera at f1.6 aperture, so a little bit lower aperture here on the Mate 10 Pro, which means it's going to be slightly better when it comes to low light photos. So that's just one slight difference between the two when it comes to the cameras. The other one obviously being that one is horizontal versus vertical. That's kind of an obvious difference there. Now on the front they both have 13 megapixel cameras. On the rear both of them shoot in 4K when it comes to video. Now a major difference that you'll find between the two is that the Mate 10 Pro does have image stabilization with video, whereas the Honor V10 does not, and that is a real obvious difference if you're walking with the two devices taking some video. The Mate 10 Pro footage is very stable, whereas on the V10 it's a lot of shaky video, and it's pretty noticeable. It's not terrible, but I wouldn't recommend the V10 if for some reason you want to take video and you need to have stable footage, unless of course you have a gimbal, and then it doesn't really matter between the two anyways. But as far as the actual video quality and the still photo quality, I don't notice a huge difference. There's just a slight difference between the two for me when it comes to the still photo quality, and I have to give just a slight advantage here to the Mate 10 Pro, but other than that they basically have most of the same exact modes here available, so that when you slide over to the left, if I slide over to the right, it gives me some other options here as well. Basically the same exact ones, if you can see that here, so exact same setup there. And then we do also have Pro mode available on both of these as well, and I'm apparently having issues sliding that over. But other than that, basically the same camera setup. They both have the ability to do the depth of field there, so that's that wide aperture. Whoops, I hit the home button on accident. We also have portrait mode on both of them as well, and then we also have live still photos, or moving pictures, what they call it there, and that's available on both devices. So the major differences being slightly better night performance or low light performance with the Mate 10 Pro, and also better image stabilization when it comes to video. But outside of that, I see the cameras as being basically the same between these two, and we will do more in-depth video where I strictly compare the cameras on these two devices coming up in the near future. So the next area I want to talk about is the battery life. For that, I'm going to flip it over to the back. So on the Mate 10 Pro, we have a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. On the V10, we have a 3,750 milliamp hour battery. Now, I'm going to mention this, that both of these have absolutely fantastic battery life. If you're just looking for a flat out pretty much some of the best battery life I've ever had on a phone. This has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. I get anywhere from like 8 to 9 hours of screen on time with the Mate 10 Pro. It is absolutely phenomenal when it comes to battery life. On a bad day, I might only get 6, but that's if I'm using it in a very strange way, maybe gaming the whole time, or I don't know, but that would be really abnormal. Whereas on the V10, you're getting closer, for me at least, 6 to 7 hours of screen on time. Now, one thing I will mention is that you can see that I'm only using it on 2G, so I'm pretty much using Wi-Fi all the time with this one, whereas this one I have on LTE, because the Mate 10 Pro, at least all of the versions of the Mate 10 Pro, will get LTE in the US, so it doesn't matter whether you buy the Chinese version, the European version, doesn't matter. They all have all the bands you need in the US, whereas on the V10, if you buy the Chinese version, obviously you don't get all the necessary bands for the US. So we'll go ahead and call the battery a clear winner here, which is obvious. It's the more expensive phone, so it should get better battery life, and it does, so that's great, but they both have very good battery life. Now, in terms of the software, that is completely a draw. They literally have the exact same software. Now, I've actually put a skin on there, but in terms of the actual software, we'll go ahead and go in here. You pretty much notice that they're exact same. Now, again, this one has a theme on it, so that's why it looks a little bit different, but in terms of the actual software, it's the identical software. So we'll go in here to System and go into About Phone, and both of them are running EMUI. Now this one says Pixel Dust because that's the theme that's on here, but you can see EMUI 8.0, 8.0, and over here same thing, EMUI 8.0, 8.0. So both of them are running the same exact software, so that's a complete draw. And I will say, in terms of software, EMUI has come a long way. It feels almost like stock Oreo with a whole bunch of nice features on top of it, similar to like what you'd get with a OnePlus phone. So I really like it. I will say that it's a big improvement over what you used to get with EMUI. It almost kind of felt like an iPhone when you were using it. So the next area I want to talk about is a speaker, and again, that's a clear winner for the Mate 10 Pro because this one actually has dual speakers. So we have an earpiece speaker and a bottom firing speaker, whereas on the V10 you just have that bottom firing speaker. There is no earpiece speaker with the V10, and it's noticeable. They both actually sound pretty good. They have a decent amount of bass. I did a comparison of the Mate 10 Pro with the iPhone 8 Plus. The iPhone 8 Plus for me just had a slightly better speaker when it came to, you know, those dual speakers, but this one has a good speaker. It's just that it's only bottom firing, so the clear winner there would be the Mate 10 Pro when it comes to speaker. Now, another area where there's a major difference is with this one you have IP68 water resistance, so basically this phone is all but waterproof, unless you drop it underwater and you can't ever find it, then obviously it's going to die. But the V10 doesn't have any kind of waterproofing, so that's one thing you're losing by saving some money on the V10 as well. In terms of audio, I actually kind of have to give the win to the V10 here because it does have a headphone jack, whereas on the Mate 10 Pro you can see we do not have any kind of headphone jack. It does come with a dongle for Type-C, but you don't get a headphone jack, so we got to give the slight win there to the V10 when it comes to the audio. Now, overall, which one do I think is the better purchase? Well, I can say this. I love the Mate 10 Pro. It's a fantastic device. However, when this phone comes out in April, I will definitely be picking up the US version of the V10. It's a fantastic device. I really like my Honor 7X. So basically, take my Honor 7X and put in better internals that I like on the Mate 10 Pro, and that's what you should get with the V10. Now, there are definitely some things that you're going to miss when you get the V10. If you decide that you want the V10 instead of the Mate 10 Pro, you're going to lose out on some things. You lose out on waterproofing, you lose out on image stabilization when it comes to video. Obviously, you don't get that premium look that you get with the Mate 10 Pro. So there's some trade-offs that you're going to take in order to save that extra $150, but overall I think they're both fantastic devices, both definitely worth picking or checking out at least. And I will be doing some comparisons of the V10 with a number of other devices. I'm going to do a camera comparison between these two devices just to see how close they really are, and I'll let you guys kind of decide for yourself if they're really as close as I think that they are when it comes to the cameras. But overall, fantastic devices. Let me know what you guys think. Is it worth it to spend the extra money for the Mate 10 Pro? Are you thinking about picking up a V10 or maybe the OnePlus 5T? I'm definitely going to do a comparison of this device to the OnePlus 5T because the price point seems very similar, and there's a lot of similarities between the two devices. So overall, both fantastic devices. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and don't forget about that giveaway down here, and we'll see you all in the next video. Peace.